There's a kind of power most people will never touch, not because they don't want it, but because it would eat them alive. I'm not talking about influence, money, or getting people to do what you say. I mean the power that rewires you, the kind that hardens your center, rewrites your reflexes, and makes normal feel like a distant life you accidentally grew out of. Once you step over that threshold, you don't go back. Machiavelli understood this. Hand real power to the average person and they sprint into their own downfall. They overreach. They confuse fear with respect. They fall in love with applause, grow addicted to flattery, and surround themselves with the exact people who'll smile, wait, and strike. That's why he didn't write for everyone. He wrote for the one, the ruler, the strategist, the shadow. If you're still here, that's your signal. You're not built for average. But if you're careless, this path will strip you to the bone. First, uncomfortable truth. Real power starts with emotional distance. Not cruelty, not rage. Distance. Most people believe power means status, followers, titles, access. That's decoration. The engine is detachment, your ability to remain unmoved by other people's reactions. The weak get a taste of attention and immediately start chasing approval. They pick words that win applause. They soften edges to be liked. They perform. Rulers don't. The second your feelings tether to their feelings, you belong to them, even if they appear to serve you. This is why the most dangerous students of power are cold, not heartless, not hostile. Cold. A cold man doesn't flinch at begging, flattery, or threats. He watches, he measures, he decides. And when you become that still, people will try to pull you back into their control. You've changed. You're too cold. Good. That's the point. They'll set emotional traps, guilt, bait, faux intimacy, just to see if you'll break frame. Don't argue. Don't explain. Don't perform. Hold the line and let their discomfort expose itself. Second truth. Power isn't granted. It's taken. Quietly. The weak wait for permission, for a title, for the room to validate them. The strategist moves without announcement. No rebellion, no speeches. Just a subtle shift until people are answering to you before they realize it's happening. Your silence makes others talk more. Your presence tightens the air. Your decisions ripple. That doesn't arrive overnight. It's positioning. You study whose emotions control them. You map spotlight chasers. You talk less. You observe more. You strike small and precise. By the time they notice, you're already the axis. If you need a phrase to anchor this, be unreadable, be untouchable. Let love and fear blur inside other people until they can't tell which one keeps them in orbit. Clarity is for your journals. Ambiguity is for the world. Third truth. If you don't shape your environment, it will reshape you. This is where brilliant men die. They rise, dominate, then get cozy. The wrong people sit close. The wrong energy fills their calendar. The wrong feedback strokes their ego. Softness creeps in disguised as I've earned it. Then the same room that cheered starts feeding on them. Guard your circle like a lion guards fresh meat. Your environment is never neutral. It's sharpening you or dulling you. And if that sounds harsh, remember, distance isn't punishment. It's preservation. You don't cut people off to feel superior. You remove drains so your focus stays lethal. You don't announce it. You vanish. You reposition. You watch from a clean vantage point. Anyone who panics at your boundaries just revealed why they were never safe to keep close. Here's what most won't tell you. This level of power is not glamorous. It's surgical. It's lonely. cold. You will carry silence like armor. You will watch people self-sabotage and let them. You will say less, move slower, and let your absence teach louder than your speeches. If that emptiness scares you, you're not ready yet. If that emptiness feels like oxygen, keep going. Because this is only the foundation. The next layer is what I call psychological gravity. How to become the quiet center everyone orbits without understanding why. It begins when you stop trying to be seen and start training others to feel you. Most people enter rooms trying to stand out. Loud clothes, louder mouths, constant posturing. The powerful invert it. They become the quietest presence in the room, the one who speaks last, and only to say what no one can ignore. Silence isn't retreat, it's dominance in slow motion. Let your stillness work. When people pour words into your silence, they reveal their insecurities, their angles, their cravings for your validation. Now you have the high ground. You're not reacting. You're collecting data. You're deciding whether this person gets your warmth, your time, or nothing. One warning before we move on. The deeper you go, the more they'll try to decode you. Good. Encourage it. You are not obligated to be legible. Detach empathy from action. Feel everything. Move on logic. Observe suffering without reflexively rescuing. Listen to excuses without lowering your standards. Be kind privately and strategic always. You are not cold because you hate people. You are cold because you've studied what ungoverned empathy does to leaders. It turns them into tools. From here, the frame changes. You stop chasing applause. You stop explaining decisions. You stop treating your warmth as default access. Approval becomes a side effect, not a target. And when the tests come, and they will remember the order. Go still, get data, set consequence. No arguments, no speeches. Just standards embodied so consistently that your presence rewrites behavior. You're stepping into a different weather system now. Less noise, more pressure, fewer friends, higher leverage. If you can breathe here, you're ready for the next phase. If not, pause. Rebuild the spine. Then come back. Let's step deeper. If emotional detachment is the foundation, then silent positioning is the battlefield where real power either grows or dies. Here's the truth. Most people want power to be obvious. They want medals, titles, public validation. They want a crowd clapping so they can feel like a leader. But Machiavelli saw through that illusion. He knew the most effective power is the kind no one announces. No crown, no throne, just influence so woven into the room that others move around you without realizing it. This is why he said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both." But he wasn't simply talking about intimidation. What he meant was this. When you are unreadable, when your presence carries tension, love disguises itself as fear. People cannot separate admiration from caution, and that is the sweet spot. So how do you create this kind of power? You practice subtraction. When everyone else is busy being seen, you learn to vanish into stillness. You say less, and suddenly people hang on every word you do speak. You move slower, and the room unconsciously adjusts its pace to yours. You choose silence, and others rush to fill it, revealing far more about themselves than they meant to. This doesn't happen by accident. It's a war of positioning. Think of it like chess. Every move is small, subtle, and planned to tilt the board until your opponent realizes, too late, that you control the center. Start by studying people. Who can't resist talking? Who craves being seen? Who softens at praise? Who stiffens at criticism? These tells are leverage points. You don't need to confront anyone. Just watch. Let them reveal their weaknesses. Then you position yourself quietly around those gaps. The result? Influence without exposure. People begin to defer to you, not because you demanded it, but because they feel your weight in the room. They second-guess their own instincts in your silence. And that's when you've won the ground without raising a sword. But here's the paradox. The more invisible your moves, the more visible their effect. The less you explain, the more people explain themselves. The less you insist, the more they assume. And soon, your absence carries as much force as your presence. Machiavelli warned that this is where most people stumble. They want to be understood. They want applause. They want certainty. But clarity kills mystique. And mystique is the oxygen of power. Now let's move to the next trap. Your environment. This one destroys rulers more than enemies ever could. You can master detachment. You can master silence. But if you let your environment soften you, you're finished. Here's how it happens. A man rises. He becomes the axis of a group. He dominates through his stillness and his silence. But then he gets comfortable. He surrounds himself with the wrong people, flatterers, emotional drains, weak minds. He hears their feedback, their jokes, their empty praise. Slowly, without realizing it, he bends to them. His sharpness dulls. His boundaries weaken. His detachment fades. Machiavelli's solution? Guard your circle like a lion guards fresh meat. Your environment is either sharpening you or softening you. There is no neutral. If you keep people who whine, who beg, who manipulate, who gossip, you will become them. Not because you want to, but because you've let their energy write itself into you. The strongest Machiavellian minds understand this. They don't cut people off out of cruelty. They cut with clarity. They don't announce it. They vanish, reposition, and observe from a cleaner vantage point. And when someone reacts badly to your absence, that reaction is the proof you were right to leave. Ask yourself this. Is your environment feeding your detachment? Or is it secretly tying your emotions back into the noise? If it's the latter, you're already bleeding power. This path is not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not the kind of power movies romanticize. It is surgical, cold, and yes, lonely. But here's the test. If you can survive in that silence, if you can resist explaining yourself, if you can let other people crumble without stepping in to rescue them, you've crossed into a rare category. You're no longer fighting for scraps of attention. You're building psychological gravity. That's the second phase. Psychological gravity means you don't chase, you don't shout, you don't decorate yourself to be seen. You let others orbit you. You let their words and actions bend toward your stillness. And when they do, you've seized the highest ground. Control without force. From here, everything changes. Your silence becomes strategy. Your detachment becomes armor. Your environment becomes weaponized. But there's another level. If you can handle detachment, silence, and environment, you're ready for the next weapon. Unpredictability. Because once people think they know your pattern, you must shatter it. Predictability is comfort. Unpredictability is terror. And in that terror lies absolute control. That's where we're headed next. So far, you've learned 3 foundations. Detach from emotions, control the silence, and guard your environment. But let's be clear, those alone won't keep you untouchable. Because once people think they've figured you out, they'll adjust, they'll prepare, they'll find angles. That's why the next weapon is unpredictability. Machiavelli understood this with surgical precision. Predictable men are easy prey. They react on autopilot. Flatter them, and they soften. Challenge them, and they explode. Ignore them, and they chase. That kind of man can be tolerated, but never feared. He's not a ruler. He's a wind-up toy, easy to read and easy to control. Now compare that to the unpredictable man. He's the storm no one can forecast. You don't know if he'll rage or stay calm, punish or reward, step forward or step back. And that uncertainty, that fear of possibility, is more terrifying than any single action. So how do you become unpredictable without being chaotic? You break patterns strategically. Every person in your life carries a mental model of who you are. They expect certain reactions. They think they know your limits, your emotions, your behavior. You must shatter those assumptions on purpose. If they expect anger, give them a smile. If they expect confrontation, step back into silence. If they expect logic, show a flash of raw emotion, then disappear. Help them once, then never again. Why? Because every time you break the mold, you inject doubt into their system, and once doubt enters, they can no longer prepare for you. This is power at its most devastating. You're no longer a man. They start to see you as a calculation they can't solve. Every conversation, every glance, every silence becomes a puzzle, and puzzles breed fear. Here's another technique: strategic reversals. Stay consistent long enough for people to get comfortable, then flip. If you're always diplomatic, suddenly become brutally direct. If you're always generous, refuse a favor with zero explanation. If you're always calm, explode once, then walk away. The shock waves of that single reversal echo longer than 100 predictable moves. Suddenly, everyone is second-guessing themselves around you. They start to censor their words, adjust their tone, overthink their choices, not because you told them to, but because they're terrified of triggering a reaction they can't predict. That is invisible domination. You don't need to control people directly. You design the stage, flip the script, and let their own paranoia do the heavy lifting. But unpredictability isn't just about breaking patterns. It's also about silence, weaponized silence. Machiavelli hinted at this often. Speak less than you know. Never fully explain your reasoning. Let ambiguity hang in the air. When someone presses you for clarity, end with, "We'll see." When you know the truth, hold it in and let them lie in front of you. Why? Because knowledge withheld creates mystique. It trains people to fear your silence. And when people fear your silence, they censor themselves before you even open your mouth. That's leadership without lifting a finger. Next, master the art of open threads. This is where normal minds collapse. Most people try to close loops. They explain, clarify, reassure. Don't. Start a thought, then stop. Tell someone, "We'll talk later," and never return to it. Leave mid-conversation with no anger, no explanation. What happens? You plant hooks in their mind. They replay the moment. They wonder what you were going to say, what it meant, what you'll do next. You now live rent-free in their head, and the longer they spin, the deeper your influence embeds itself. This is how Machiavelli taught rulers to haunt people's minds, not just dominate their actions. Because once you occupy someone's thoughts, you don't need chains to control them. They chain themselves. But unpredictability has one final layer. Control the consequences, not the people. Most amateurs try to control people directly, nagging, correcting, demanding. That's clumsy. It's obvious. It shows weakness. Instead, design your consequences like a shadow system of rules. A betrayal is met with silence, not confrontation. Disrespect earns exclusion, not debate. Overstepping is punished with withdrawal, not anger. You never explain. You never argue. You simply create conditions where bad behavior is followed by invisible punishment. What happens next is extraordinary. People start regulating themselves around you. They weigh their words. They check their tone. They avoid assumptions. Not because you asked, but because they fear the consequence of losing access to you. That's true Machiavellian power. Control without touching the strings. Now, do you see why this level destroys most people? They can't handle being misunderstood. They can't tolerate not explaining themselves. They crave predictability because it makes them feel accepted. But predictability is a prison. And if you want freedom, you need to be feared, not for what you do, but for what you might do. This is the third layer: emotional detachment, psychological gravity, and unpredictability fused together. But there's one more transformation waiting the final step. This is where you stop being just a powerful man and start becoming something else entirely. A myth. You've learned how to detach, how to bend the room with silence, how to strike with unpredictability. But Machiavelli's darkest insight was this: the most powerful rulers weren't just men. They became myths. Why? Because men can be challenged. Men can be doubted. Men can be replaced. But myths live in whispers, in rumors, in imaginations. Myths survive even when the man is gone. Here's the uncomfortable truth: your actions will fade. Your words will be forgotten. Your accomplishments will get buried by time. But your aura, if you build it right, will outlive you. And aura is crafted, not stumbled into. So how do you move from man to myth? It begins with choosing your archetype. People don't follow personalities, they follow symbols. If you're inconsistent, one thing today and another tomorrow, people may find you interesting, but never unforgettable. Instead, pick your form and commit to it until your last breath. Examples: the cold strategist who rarely smiles, moves with deliberate calm, and speaks like each word is a verdict. The polite assassin whose quiet presence cuts deeper than any insult. The charming observer who flatters you as he quietly takes everything from you. Once you decide, burn the bridge back to normal. You don't break character in private. You don't soften just because you're with friends. Because the strength of a myth is built on consistency. Even your enemies will respect you more for being ruthlessly predictable in your archetype than for being a shapeshifter with no identity. But consistency alone isn't enough. Myths feed on mystery. Machiavelli himself loved to stir rumors without fingerprints. He knew whispers could spread faster and stick harder than facts. So how do you use this? You weaponize suggestion. Let them believe you have more than you show. Let them think you've done what you haven't. If someone accuses you of cruelty, smile. If someone praises your brilliance, change the subject. If someone insists you manipulated the outcome, say nothing. The less you confirm or deny, the thicker the fog around you becomes. And in that fog, stories start to grow on their own. People add details you never gave them. They exaggerate your moves. They turn you into something larger than life. Congratulations, you've entered legend territory. Now, here's a crucial detail. Myths are not built through explanations. They are built through marks. Most people live forgettable lives because they explain too much. They justify, they clarify, they apologize. Power leaves marks, not explanations. A mark is what lingers after you've gone. The tension, the question, the unease. Examples: leave a conversation halfway without anger. Compliment someone you normally ignore, but only once. Show keen interest in someone's plan, then vanish the next day. Help someone publicly, then punish them privately later. These aren't random cruelties. They're memory design. Because people don't remember the details of what you said. They remember how you made them feel, with no closure. And that lack of closure is what cements you in their mind. That's the outline of a myth forming. Next, loyalty. This is where weak leaders collapse. They beg for blind loyalty, and when they don't get it, they crumble. Machiavelli knew better. Loyalty must feel dangerous. Here's the rule. If someone defends you in public, reward them privately in excess. But if someone betrays you in private, destroy them publicly without warning. Never threaten, never announce, just act. This does two things. First, it makes loyalty a razor. It cuts both ways. Second, it creates risk-weighted allegiance. People don't stay loyal because they love you. They stay loyal because betrayal feels suicidal. They'll treat you like a god whose wrath is unknowable. And once fear mixes with devotion, worship begins. At this point, you must stop speaking to influence. Words are for the powerless. Presence is the currency of the powerful. You don't explain anymore. You sculpt perception. That means entering rooms 5 seconds slower than everyone else, holding eye contact a second longer than necessary, pausing before you answer, ending conversations first, dressing one level colder than everyone else. Why does this work? Because these unconscious cues project an aura beyond words. You're no longer a man people understand. You're a force they feel. And that's what Machiavelli ultimately meant. When you train yourself to be felt instead of seen, you cross the threshold from mortal to myth. Most people want to be liked. Some want to be remembered. Few ever learn how to become unforgettable. But if you're still here, you're close. Because the final transformation is coming. The moment where you stop building power and instead, you become power itself. We've reached the final transformation. Detachment, silence, environment, unpredictability, myth-making, these are the layers that brought you here. But Machiavelli's darkest lesson is that the end goal isn't to have power, it's to become power. Think about it. Most people chase external signs, status, followers, riches, applause. They mistake those things for power, but they're fragile. Take them away, and the person collapses. Real power isn't what you own. Real power is what others become in your presence. And when you master this, you stop needing to prove anything. You don't flex, you don't shout, you don't decorate yourself to be noticed. You simply exist in a way that bends reality around you. Machiavelli would say, at this level, words are unnecessary. You sculpt perception instead. That means slowing down in rooms, letting silence fill the air around you. It means answering questions with pauses that make others second-guess themselves. It means smiling without warmth, making kindness rare and deliberate. It means leaving conversations first, training people to feel your absence as weight, not relief. Every move becomes symbolic, every gesture calculated. You're no longer explaining. You're designing how people interpret you. And here's what separates the myth from the man. Most people want to be understood. You must become impossible to fully predict. They want to be liked. You must make being in your presence feel like walking through a storm. Dangerous, magnetic, unforgettable. This is why weak men collapse at this stage. They want validation. They want applause. They need to feel accepted. But acceptance kills aura. The myth survives only by staying untouchable. Let's go deeper. At this level, you start practicing what I call perception sculpting. Every detail, how you walk, how you dress, how you withdraw, is part of the legend. You become an energy signature people recognize without words. Presence becomes your currency. Silence becomes your weapon. Consistency becomes your religion. And now, let's talk about the last edge: worship. Machiavelli never asked rulers to beg for loyalty. He engineered it, but more importantly, he made betrayal suicidal. He taught rulers to reward loyalty with overwhelming generosity and punish betrayal with ruthless speed. Why? Because it conditions people. They learn quickly. Standing with you multiplies their value, but crossing you destroys them. And here's the key: you don't threaten. You don't warn. You act. Quietly, decisively. People will tell the story for you, and those stories will spread faster than any speech you could give. That's how myths grow, through whispers, not proclamations. The final step is to make yourself unforgettable, not by action, but by aura. Leave shapes, not explanations. Walk out of a meeting halfway with no anger. Compliment someone once, then never again. Reward someone in private, punish another in public. These contradictions leave impressions that don't fade. They linger like shadows people can't shake. That tension, that haunting uncertainty, is the shape of your legend carving itself into their minds. At this stage, you're no longer fighting for control. You are the control. Not because of what you say, not because of what you do, but because of what others feel when you're around you. They police their own words. They adjust their own tone. They second-guess every move without you lifting a finger. That's the true pinnacle of Machiavellian power. You don't chase influence. You don't play the game. You become the game itself. And here's the paradox. Once you become the myth, you no longer care if you're loved, feared, or respected. Because all of those are just interpretations orbiting your presence. You don't seek them. They happen automatically. Most people want to be remembered. Few ever learn how to become unforgettable. But if you've walked this path, detachment, silence, environment, unpredictability, myth, aura, you've already crossed into a category beyond normal men. You are no longer building power. You are the power. Not because of what you own, not because of what you say, but because of what everyone else becomes when they enter your orbit. And that, Machiavelli knew, is the rarest transformation of all.